It is the Two Deep NFL podcast with you as always, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHP. Much to get to. The two big holdouts for the defensive linemen are over. Nick Bosa's in camp with the 49ers. I've got buyer's remorse. I think I got the right Bosa. Is back with the 49ers. Chris Jones ends his holdout with the Chiefs. What does it mean for two of the top contenders for the Super Bowl? How are the Jets looking without Aaron Rodgers? A devastating injury to them. Just 4 plays into the first season with Rodgers under center. Where do they go from here? Josh Allen turned it over 4 times. The Bills actually have a quarterback problem right now. Are the Dolphins the favorite in the AFC East? Who is the NFC's best? Cowboys look pretty good at 40-0. Niners 30-7 winners. Rams knocking off the Seahawks. Eagles survive in advance. Who's the best in the NFC? Browns look pretty good over the Bengals 24-3. Are they for real? Was that more about the Browns or the Bengals? Jordan Love throws 3 TDs in his debut as the guy for the Green Bay Packers. Are we all ready to believe? And what are we looking for here in week 2? We talk about it right now on the Two Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Two Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Two Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Two Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Two Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you, Curtis. Back at it here talking NFL football and talking about some defensive linemen getting back into the mix. Jeff, let's start with you. You talked about Bosa. It was one of the topics we had a week or two ago. Was basically there's not enough being made of that holdout. Did enough get made of it? Did the 49ers right thing?
Yeah, they paid him a boatload of money, and you knew that was going to happen. I mean, the Bosas have made quite a reputation for how they handle contract negotiations. Very, very difficult to deal with, but they get what they want. Look, Nick Bosa is maybe one of the 3 best defensive players in this league right now, and you knew they were going to pay that money. You knew they landed a great situation with Brock Purdy playing quarterback for them because it was probably an easier deal to get done. But he makes a difference for them. I mean, he's a huge difference maker in this league. And so getting what he got, I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that it took as long as it did. I thought maybe a couple weeks in the training camp it would get done, but it made all the sense in the world. And on the other side of this with Chris Jones, living in Kansas City, we all know how this played out. We all watched it play out. So in the last podcast, this was a compromise. This was the Chiefs realizing he's got to play some way. Let's make him feel a little bit better about his situation this year. He realized he wasn't getting that big payday from the Chiefs. So let's get on the field and make some money and get what I can get. All the big talk about week 8 and, every card he could play, he played. And this was the point where he realized that to put himself in a situation where that franchise number could be compromised, he didn't want to be there. And so I don't think he'll be here next year. I think it was the best thing for both teams.
Yeah. Eric, what's your view of both these guys getting done? One guy gets the long-term deal, one guy doesn't.
Well, I think the big deal is that one guy's on contract number 2 and the other guy's on contract number 3. I think that really helps. Nick Bosa also has draft. It's so like I don't mean this facetiously, but like Nick Bosa has the draft capital, which stays with players a lot longer than it ever should. He also has, the name. He also has the accolades of being a defensive player of the year. So it makes sense. The Niners, to Jeff's point, and he's 100% correct, is the Niners compare, like anytime you compare a superstar at a premium position with a rookie deal guy in a premium position, that's what you want to do. So like the Browns did it with Myles Garrett and Baker Mayfield, and like you see all across the league. The Chiefs have Mahomes, and then they got Jones. Those are two premium guys, both at veteran deals. So I think it's just easier for the 49ers to do it that way. So the 49ers just always were going to be a favorite to do it rather than the Chiefs. But glad to see, Bosa get his. And like I said on the last show, I think, Chris Jones, I think we're all hopeful that he plays just the same way he played last year and he gets paid.
Yeah, I think that'd be the ultimate prize. Is this just a matter of DNs are more valuable than D tackles, Jeff?
As part of it, helps the process. I mean, you know what the marketplace is. You know how hard it is to find a dominant edge rusher. But Chris Jones is in a unique category. He and Aaron Donald, Quentin Williams to a certain degree. Fletcher Cox was there a while back, and when he was really dominant player. If you can find a dominant interior rusher, the league has changed so much now, and there's been so much athleticism now at both tackles. You're seeing a lot more teams who are able to put two confident tackles out there to guard against edge rushers, that having someone who can break down the interior of a defense it's a special skill set. And if you ask Tom Brady, he would tell you that. You ask Aaron Rodgers, he would tell you that. They do not want to see people in their face. Patrick Mahomes the same way. So Chris Jones has value, but as Eric pointed out, he's about 4 years older than Nick Bosa is, and just in not the same place where he can command that kind of money. But he's, look, I thought you're going to see more players playing this kind of game moving forward. It's if you really look at what's happening on the league with Mike Evans in Tampa, the way they handle, he's playing now, but his agent was very vocal about wanting to get the deal done and not getting it done. Danielle Hunter in Minnesota. You look at, I'm sure T. Higgins is not going to be happy about how the Bengals are handling his situation now that Joe Burrow's been paid and all these running backs. There's a lot more defiance in players and a lot more animosity about how this is playing out for them. So I don't think you're going to see a lot more players probably holding out or trying to do something that creates the kind of distraction that these guys created for themselves.
Eric, I want to double back to what you said about the draft capital. Are you, because I've read this in a couple of different places, are you saying that because he was the number 2 overall pick, that he'll always be valued at more than Chris Jones, who was a 2nd-round pick? Why?
Correct. I mean, okay, so the fact of the matter is that's true. Like, there's no disputing it. If you put APY as the Y variable,
but it also should be true most of the time.
So you gotta let me
better
finish.
Player.
I'm trying to add something to the show here, and you just interrupt me. If you have the Y variable as APY and you add to the model where they were drafted, it adds to the predictability. So that's the truth. That happens, right? J.C. Jackson and Denzel Ward gets paid more, even if they're equal. Now they're not equal because we've seen that already. But the reason is like we've seen Brett Veach and how he acts. Every single first rounder that has a pulse that's cut by a team, Brett Veach is calling, right? And so all these guys, they have an eval on a player when they come out, and they make all kinds of excuses, or in the case of when they re-sign a player, they're trying to reinforce their eval, right? It's a pat on their own back to a certain extent. So it's the mechanism, you can explain it away with a bunch of different mechanisms, but the fact is draft capital carries with a player even late into their career, even if that's irrational, even if we know a lot more than we knew about them before the draft. All of these decision makers and team builders are trying to confirm their own priors on a player.
Yeah, they're seeing the stars, right? They're seeing the stars before they even become stars.
Listen, I do get, like, when the industry said you're one of the best, people are always willing to come in and say, okay, let me try to give this guy a shot. Red says, hey, Kadarius Toney. Yeah, I mean, the Giants decided they didn't want him. The Chiefs gave him a 3rd-round pick. Yeah, I get that. But when you get to where you're at stardom level, like we're not, Chris Jones is up for the Defensive Player of the Year award.
Sure.
The reason he didn't get it is because he's, as Jeff said, 3 years older. He plays D tackle instead of D end. Chiefs didn't have the cap room. They've got a quarterback who's, and the Chiefs have won a Super Bowl. Had the Chiefs not won a Super Bowl, and the 49ers had won 2. If the 49ers had Mahomes and the Chiefs had Brock Purdy, I think you'd see this go exactly the opposite.
Okay, but here's a question. In the 2016 draft, who was the best quarterback? Dak. Who got the big contract first? Goff and Wentz. They were 1-2. Dak was drafted where? 4th round. That they always act this way. Kirk Cousins was a 4th round pick. He got taken to the woodshed by Washington 2 straight years with the draft capital. These guys, football is an art form to these evaluators. It's not a science. It's not a production function. These guys, they have an eval on a player, and in some ways, regardless of what actually happens on the field, they still cling to who these guys are, no matter what.
I think we're on the same page on this. I think, largely. My point is, when you have a 1st round pick, it's easier to give the big contract, right? Like, Jared Goff had a pretty good first couple of years. Let's pay him. Carson Wentz had a pretty good couple of years. Let's pay him. Well, Dak's only a 4th round, right? Yes, I get it. It's a stigma you have to overcome. That stigma's gone for Chris Jones. That's gone at this point.
Yeah, I think more of it is the fact that Jones is older and he plays a less premium position. Edge is more rare than defensive tackle, even though defensive tackle is a pretty premium position now. You'd want, how many good defensive ends? There's more good defensive tackles in the NFL than there are good defensive ends.
Maybe this is more of a reflection. Maybe we'll get to it more when we talk about who's the best in the NFC. But Brock Purdy and Bosa, or Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, which is the better combo?
Eric?
Oh, it's not close.
Giving you a chance. He's not going to answer it.
It's not close, right?
Okay. All right. I'm giving you the chance to answer it. So I assume you're saying
Mahomes and Jones, right?
Okay. All right.
We live in the world.
Yeah. All right. Just wanted to ask. It's like I asked the question. I guess you're too good for the answer. Let's talk about the Jets. Jeff, are they screwed without Aaron Rodgers? Don't even if you hesitate.
Yeah. Well, screwed in terms of winning a championship. Yeah, they're not winning a championship this year. But I was pleasantly surprised by how they played in that game after he went down. And I know that's not the popular thing to say right now with Zach Wilson playing quarterback for them. I thought they showed a lot of heart, a lot of talent. Breece Hall looked tremendous coming off that ACL. Their defense was lights out. I mean, Josh Allen, we'll talk about him in a second, but they obviously created a lot of issues for him in that offense. They're good enough roster-wise to win 9-10 games still. It would not surprise me if they were competing for a playoff spot. If they're able to be smart about how they deal with Zach Wilson, they're going to become the Baltimore Ravens of 2000. It's going to be a lot of low-scoring games. This may be the highest scoring game they get this year. But if they play to their defense and they run the football and they can make a few plays in the passing game, yeah, I could see them hanging in games. And then it comes down to, just like last year, whether Zach Wilson can be competent and average, or whether he can just be a disaster. And maybe the Aaron Rodgers factor we see this year for this team, maybe the blessing they get is that he makes that guy better.
Yeah. I mean, that's and we'll see. I didn't see a whole lot of him being better, but I'm open to the idea.
Yeah, he moved the football. That last drive, he threw a touchdown pass.
He did. I mean,
that's better.
It is better. And listen, there are things like, Garrett Wilson caught some touchdowns last year as well. I feel for the Jets fans and all that. I feel for fantasy fans that had Garrett Wilson, like my daughter.
Yeah.
Because you're planning on, here's the new Devontae Adams, and now, nope, we're back to Shecky throwing passes to him. Eric, I know you once dubbed him the white Patrick Mahomes. Let's be honest.
What?
Zach,
No.
Yo, yes, you did. Yes, you did.
We've got to find. Yes, I'm guilty of liking Zach Wilson out of college. I'm not sure I dubbed him that, but I will say this.
I thought he said white chocolate.
The Jets defense is the truth.
Jason Williams.
Yeah.
The
And this is from a guy who was saying the Jets defense would go downhill. Didn't he say that too? They were going to not be the same defense
this year.
I thought Eric said you can't rely on their defense being as good last year as it was.
There was he is that defense kind of goes up and down, right?
Yeah, but like there were good Monday. I mean, Josh Allen, there was a little wind aided, right? Josh Allen, I've never seen somebody stare a first down in the face and want to throw a 50-yard pick, but 3 times. But they were great, and they go deep at edge. They're really good at linebacker. C.J. Mosley has really come back and had a pretty nice career with the Jets. Corners are great. The offensive line is not very good. Nathaniel Hackett is. Nathaniel Hackett and Zach Wilson are the biggest privilege in the NFL right now. But I do think that defense is good enough. The problem is you play in the AFC where Josh Allen makes rudimentary decisions on Monday and they lose by double digits and we're not talking about them. So I think long-term prospects are bad for the Jets, but the whole season you're going to look at that defense, and much like they did last year, you're going to look at the defense and say, what could have been if you have real quarterback play. I hope Zach plays to league average performance. If he does, they're in the playoffs. If he doesn't, everybody's getting fired.
Jeff, you have a lot of connections around the league. Any truth to the rumor that Nathaniel Hackett wants to rehab his coordinating while Aaron Rodgers is rehabbing his Achilles and let somebody else do the play calling?
Yeah, if you thought Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett was a treat, it could be interesting with Zach Wilson. But again,
there's no hope for this team.
Yeah, well, they're not going to play at a high level in the passing game. I'll give you that. But I think there is a little bit of hope. Again, I can't really minimize what they did in that game. I thought when Aaron Rodgers went down for plays into that game, I thought this is going to be 27-0 or maybe 31-0. They're not going to score a point.
Yeah, so did everybody in the bars in Wisconsin where they had drinks.
They had to pay for their drinks, right? That's right. We got to pay for our drinks.
Had the Bills minus 2,500 live. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so to hang around the way they hung around, to kind of find yourself and reset yourself emotionally, you had to believe that they were just the look on Robert Saleh's face after that play was just like he wanted to like someone had just tried to molest his daughter or something. He was ready to go kill somebody. He was so he was angry, right? He was just so hostile. So yeah, I think that was a positive thing for them. It's just something about their coaching too, that they were able to get those guys back in the same into a place where they could compete. But yeah, I mean, the next 6 games, it's what Cowboys, Patriots, Chiefs, Broncos, Eagles, right? If they can get 3-3 through that stretch, I'll give them hope. I sat here at this point last year and said the Cowboys are not going to do squat with Dak Prescott out for 4 weeks or 5 weeks. And they went 4-1 with Cooper Rush playing quarterback, doing the same things that the Jets can do with this team, playing good defense, not turning it over, running the football.
They have Mike McCarthy.
Well, that helps.
But the Jets have some really good football players.
Stop. They can't block.
I think Quinton Williams is in the same category as
very good football. Everybody has some good football players. It's the freaking NFL. But and they have better than the Cardinals. Yes, they have some very talented players. They will muddle fart their way to 8-9, 9-8, and I don't know why everybody's burying us. I don't know. You guys spent the entire offseason, sending love letters to Aaron Rodgers because you knew your quarterback position was screwed without him. That's why we're all throwing sand. Let me be the one to do it. Everybody else can wait around because they had a day. Listen, they circled the wagons and rallied around the lost quarterback. That's what it is. I've said a million times, a good team, which this team has good talent and solid coaching on the defensive side. This team will rally the troops. A good team will rally around a backup quarterback for one game. One game. Now they're going to be like, oh, we're all fine. They're all going to go out there. It's all good. It's all good. Now you get the real team, right? And everything that everyone said, the Bills wet down their legs. We'll talk about them next because Josh Allen was a disaster. He's a disaster. They're not going to see a disaster every week. They still just barely won, and Josh Allen was a freaking disaster. No, the Jets are screwed. They're not going anywhere. They're not doing anything. Yes, in the NFL, maybe they'll back ass into some 7th seed as a 9-8 team, but they are done. They are.
But that would still be an improvement over last year. I mean, I think if you're Robert Saleh, you're saying if we get 10 wins out of this, and we get Aaron Rodgers back next year, which I think he's going to play next year, and we keep our first round pick so we might be able to draft a tackle, it may not be a bad thing for them in the long run.
Yeah, no, I won't argue that point. No,
you give San Diego, Buffalo, and Cincinnati a year to suck, like to get worse. Like I actually agree with Jeff, right? Like
yes,
you know,
but will they do that? No, they will fight and claw and do everything they can to pick 19 or 20.
But
you know what they'll take? You know what they'll take? You know what they'll take? Wait for it. They'll take a D end. That's what they'll take. They'll take more defense. They'll take a safety this time. That's what's coming, right? Because all the tackles are off the board, so we'll go defense. Okay, that's what you'll see out of this team.
Tell us how you really feel about the Jets, Petro.
They're done. And Tommy's comment, like, you know, my theory, like, I listen, the fatter the coach, probably the better they are. Like, you can't look like Jeff and be a great coach. Robert Slaw is too jacked.
Yeah.
Coaches look like me, not Jeff, right? There's not enough free time to be in that kind of great shape. Can we all agree?
No.
Yeah.
Can we all agree?
Don Shula wasn't yeah. What are we talking about here?
When you're running the stairs, there's no film. They don't. No one's running
You're
in front
telling
of
me
you.
Mike Tomlin doesn't
break down.
Like Mike Tomlin's built like Jeff.
Not that great a shape. I don't know. I can't tell. Mike Tomlin's always wearing layers.
He's
I don't know.
Receiver.
Robert Salaw is too jacked to be really good.
So your thing is like Mike Holmgren's fat, Andy Reid's fat. Like you like looking at Bill Belichick's kind of, you know.
He's a sack of donuts.
And so Bill like all of a sudden all fat coaches, like, you got to be fat to be a good coach. Meanwhile, like Mike Tomlin's one of the best coaches of all time, and he looks like a free safety at William & Mary because that's what he was. Like, what are we doing here?
And John Harbaugh hasn't aged in like 25 years.
John and Jim, both.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take my Super Bowl. You want to tally up Super Bowls by physical fitness? I'm going to win.
Bill Walsh wasn't a chunk. Bill Walsh.
Bill Walsh was a skinny old
either. What are we doing?
He was a skinny old. Yeah, Bill Walsh had never lifted a weight more than a pen. Come on.
Petro, I just think you got to bail on this opinion because it's wrong. Like you just got to cut losses.
You want to? How many
chances? The coach,
remember when I said Isaiah Pacheco sucked, and then like halfway through the year I was wrong, and I was just like, hey, I'm wrong. He's actually good. Like you just got to admit that this is a wrong opinion you got.
When Dan Campbell and his burpees go bye-bye in round one of the playoffs this year, if they get
the 1 seed in the NFC right now. Dan Campbell?
Round one of the playoffs. They're not getting the 1 seed. That's not happening. All right, let's move on from my like I love how you love to point out the rounds of guys, they all get more money. And my less healthy coaches all win more. And you're just like, oh, it's just crap. It's just crap.
Because
I've got just as much math.
Don Shula has the most wins in league history. And
I've got just as much math behind my statement as you have yours, but you just throw mine out because you're a fat hater. All right, so let's move on. Let's get to the Bills. Jeff, how about it? They got a quarterback problem?
They have a quarterback and they've got a problem. Yeah, I think it's two separate things. I think if Josh Allen, what's perplexing about Josh Allen is that we've seen him play the way he needs to play and have success. We've seen him do it at the highest level in the playoffs against Mahomes, obviously, a couple of years ago. That game, I agree with Eric, that game he was almost playing to prove a point that he didn't give a crap about anything. Because it wasn't just the turnovers, it was just the type of turnovers, his response to them. And I think just as bad was the way he ran, which was there were multiple times in that game where he could have gotten down or gotten out of bounds and he just cut up field and took a shot or tried to hurdle two guys. And it was just like, what happened to all this talk about, I want to be smarter and take care of the football and be more mature? It just all went out the window in like 30 minutes. And so two things here. One, I got a text from a friend of mine in Buffalo who's pretty plugged in, and he was asking me like, "Hey, have you heard much about Diggs and Allen being sideways?" And I said, I haven't heard. I haven't been around them much, but he was saying that that's sort of the talk there behind the scenes, that there's still tension and friction between them. And the other thing is just that I suspect that they're having a harder time trying to make this new offense work with him when they've got two tight ends, less 4 or 5 wides, which he wants to do and play more like. And it didn't feel like a team that was running a lot of two tight ends. It felt like a guy who wanted to still throw the football down the field and make big plays. And if that's the way it's going to be, then Ken Dorsey has got to step in here and get things figured out, because the guy they want him to be, he wasn't that guy on Monday night.
Well, is that the issue, Eric? Ken Dorsey? Like they don't want to admit to him. I mean, I always like, I'm a fan of offensive coaches, but part of it is like there's a little bit of, I think the offense is more important than defense. Sorry, Jeff. But, it's one thing when Andy Reid says, okay, Bob Sutton, you go handle the defense, right? Like, and then he dials up record-setting offense. That's a little tougher when it's like, okay, I got the defense over here on my side. You just go handle the offense, which has the quarterback, which has the guy who's controlling the clock in the last minutes of halves with the football, and you're just leaving that guy over there to do whatever he wants. Is Ken Dorsey the problem, Eric?
I mean, I think it's more that like Brian Dable was very good. Like that helped. But no, I mean, like, was Mike Sherman the problem when Brett Favre was throwing 29 interceptions in 2005? And, was Brad Childress the problem when Brett Favre threw like 30 interceptions his last year? Like, I think that there's a little bit of a trust issue. I also think the league is kind of catching up to Josh Allen's BS. Like, there was that article, we had Brooke on the podcast, 2 or 3 weeks ago on ESPN that talked about the percentage of passes that go
Brooke Pryor, just so people
Brooke Pryor, yeah, in ESPN that covers the Steelers, used to cover the Chiefs. The whole, the fewest number of passes in a long time traveling more than 15 yards downfield. Like Josh Allen, like that's an explosive offense historically. And we saw in Kansas City a lot of turnovers in 2021 when everybody was testing out that defense on the Chiefs. And now that they've applied that defense to everybody, like, hey, funny, Justin Herbert's numbers haven't been all that great for a year and a half now. Josh Allen's numbers haven't been all that great for a year and a half now. Yeah. And I think that he's got to mature and he's got to take the check down. And he's got to stop getting his ass kicked in the run game all the time. And sure, there's a part of it that's the offensive coordinator's fault, but at some level, the quarterback's the decision maker on that team. And when you pay him as much as he's being paid, I have a hard time blaming the offensive coordinator more than I blame the quarterback.
Well, it's always the guy who has the ball in his hand. I get that, but like you can't fire that guy, right? They're not cutting him and getting somebody else. They're going to get somebody who's going to try to get to him and make it work. I mean, I think you opened up the can of worms. Is he simply a run pass option fraud? And that as he's got to just quarterback, he can't do it. We know he's always been turnover prone. Part of that's because he takes shot after shot after shot, and he stands in the pocket forever, because he's tough. Right? That's one element of it. But is the other part because he's not good at quarterbacking, Jeff?
I feel like the problem he has is they haven't developed enough of their other parts of their offense for him to trust that. And so, and Mahomes has some of this to him, and I think Andy Reid spent that year when he wasn't playing getting it out of him. You see a little bit speech here, but they taught him you got to play this way to win, and he's been very open to embracing that. But he also has gotten burned too. I mean, I felt like a big step in his maturation. He was already great, obviously, but when he threw that interception at the end of the Bengals AFC Championship loss, I don't know if you remember this, but he said, I want to be aggressive. I'd make that play again if I got the shot, which was the wrong answer. The right answer was you don't play that way, in those situations. And he changed, and you saw what happened the next year. He was taking people, give them a little bit more and not getting greedy. Josh Allen gets greedy. And when you're that talented, it can feel like, to me, it's almost, you're a Lakers fan. It's like the way Kobe Bryant played back before they started winning championships was like, I'm going to do it all myself. Give me the ball, get out of the way, I'm going to do it all by myself. And they've got to develop a run game, and they've got to develop other receivers who he can count on to where it's easier for him to say, I'll play this way and do what I have to do. Like, I don't know who the slot guy was. They've had guys in the past like Cole Beasley. I don't know who was supposed to be
Deontay Hardy. Like, what are we doing here, boys?
Yeah. I mean, it's like James Cook had some nice runs, but they didn't really stick with it. And so I don't think I think he's got tremendous talent. But again, he's super talented. And sometimes when you have a quarterback coach become the OC, that relationship that you have when you're more friendly, and now you got to be the guy who is, a little bit more parental and calling plays, it can be harder to make that transition. I think Dorsey's a bigger problem. Yeah.
Right. Like when it's sort of like, there's a lenient parent and there's a strict parent. When the lenient parent is home, for the night, then it's not all of a sudden they become a hard ass. They just let everything just goes, right. And like, if you're the buddy with the quarterback, you might have a hard time going up and grabbing him by the shirt and being like, hey, it's 3rd and 8, not 3rd and 50. And like Josh Allen, it was like he treated these 3rd and 8s like they were 3rd and 50.
Yeah.
He treated him like he was punch drunk. I'll be honest with you. What are you doing? Like, where was it?
But can we also pause? Nathaniel Hackett switched sidelines during that 2-minute drill because they had 2 full minutes to run that to get a field goal. And we weren't even in midfield before it was 30 seconds left. And then now all of a sudden they're grinding out like, well, let's set this guy up for a 50-yard shot in a rainstorm in New York. Like, what was that? That was a stupid drive too. Like that's where I'll give the OC some blame, is that they butchered that. Right, they butchered the end of the game too.
Yeah, no, they did, and it was a little bit mesmerizing to watch. It's like, what is going on here? Why are you?
Yeah, the only thing that's frustrating is he's going to play like he's going to make those throws against the Chiefs. That's what makes me mad about Monday. It's like when they face Kansas City, that's on the back shoulder of Dawson Knox for the first time all year against.
Well, and I hear you as a Chiefs fan, and every fan's woe is me. But like, this was the Jets, the new darling, the team that's coming to get them, the team that just added the Hall of Fame quarterback. Like, you should be like sharp and on it and fired up. And
that team beat you last year.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of it because he got beat by them, got hurt in that game. That game was a huge turning point in their season. He's such a competitive player that I could easily see him going in there saying, okay, Rodgers is down. I'm going to light these guys up now. Let me just go to work, and we're going to put 40 on them and blow them out and put them in their place. And it just, it looked like it. There were several times in that game, and I haven't done this with Josh Allen in a long time, but there were several times when I felt like you said, Soren, like, what is he doing out here? What in the heck is this guy doing?
Yeah. You just like, is he a little bit punch drunk on this? It's like, is he not, is he not all there? I'll tell you who is all there. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking problems are no more. They've been solving them since 1994. Get your seal coating done now before the weather turns. The weekends are booking up fast. Free consultations. No commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online right now, GannAsphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. The Dolphins, should they now be listed as the favorite in the East, Eric? They were impressive in beating the Chargers. They won a shootout. Maybe you could say, hey, last team to have the ball with some time was the winner, and we could have very easily been the Chargers. But what do you make of the Dolphins with their performance?
Taking nothing away from the Dolphins, Mike McDaniel was fantastic. Tua did everything that they asked him to do. Tyreek was amazing. Waddle is great. The running game was fine. The offensive line did really well, even without Armstead. Defense got railroaded, but that was a loss by the Chargers. Like I watched that game, and I that was my favorite game of the weekend. Like months ago, I'm like, this is going to be the best game of week 1, and it did not disappoint. Tyreek Hill got singled up on the outside more times in that game than it felt like he got singled up in the outside again in 2021 for Kansas City combined. That was the Brandon, and I like Brandon Staley. This is another part where I'm moving off of this. Brandon Staley is the Fire Festival of the NFL. That is the biggest fraud, the defensive mastermind. He got taken to the woodshed by Mike McDaniel. That was the worst. Like, I don't think I've seen a worse defensive called game in a long time. So I like the Dolphins. I will say this: Bradley Chubb is nowhere close to as good as what they traded for him. That defense is not as good as they look on paper. Offensive line's got problems against a real defense, and the other teams against them are going to make Tua be a little bit more than Chuck and Duck to Tyreek Hill. So if they go to New England on Sunday night and put up those kind of numbers, then I believe in them. Otherwise, and I can't believe I spit on my camera.
What was that?
I spit on my camera. Like, I'm so fired up by how big of a fraud Staley is. And so I think I'm wait and see on the Dolphins. Very impressive performance, but this was the Chargers losing that game.
Okay. What do you think? What do you see in the Dolphins, Jeff?
Yeah, some of the same things. I was impressed with the game plan. You know, it's tough to go back into a place where you lost and only scored 17 points a year earlier, and really got handled. I mean, defensively, and where that defense went. You know, in this game, I agree with Eric. I don't understand, like, why you can't double him, why you can't roll coverage his way, why you can't make Jalen Waddle or River Craycraft, whoever else, run the football. Just play 8 men in coverage. Just do something different. It was astounding that he was able to get so free so frequently. And yeah, I agree. Brendan Staley, it's time to show that you are a defensive coach. I mean, that's as much as we talk about Chargers charging and Justin Herbert, they haven't been a really good defense since he showed up. And that's been the consistent problem, is that they have the personnel to do it, and they just haven't found a way to get it done. I like the way they ran the football, the Chargers. I like that Kellen Moore's play calling and the use of spreading the football around. But it just felt like the Dolphins went in that game with the mindset of, we can take this team apart. And the way they call plays, the way Tyreek ran routes, the way Tua threw the football. I wrote this. This is the guy we've been waiting to see for 4 years. And so if they're able to put that guy on the field, keep him on the field for 17 weeks, yeah, they'll be the best team in the AFC East. I mean, right now, he looked like the MVP, and they look like the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Thank you for saying that, Jeff, because he threw for 466 yards and 3 touchdowns and went toe-to-toe with Justin Herbert, outshone him. He performed with almost no running game. He had, 70 rushing yards behind him, 233 behind Herbert, and I hear about Tyreek Hill, and I hear about Mike McDaniel, and I hear about a lot of things with the Dolphins, mostly Tyreek Hill. Nobody mentions
at the risk of getting sued here, he had over 300 yards from a clean pocket. So there's a little, like, Tua executed that offense incredibly well. But
he's the 5th overall pick, Eric. Can't you give him some first round pedigree love? Like, why are you hating on him like he's a 4th rounder?
Before you were in the middle of interrupting me saying that he executed that offense really well. I got to be honest with you, though. That defense, he's without Teron Armstead. Some slappy is playing left tackle for that team, and they still could not pressure him. Again,
his last 2 throws, that throw he made, climbing the pocket and hitting Tyreek Hill in stride, 40 yards down was
the fade to Hill for the game-winning touchdown.
He threw a fade to like a 5'5" receiver.
Yeah, no, he executed the offense tremendously. I'm not trying to take it away from him, but I'm gonna say the Chargers were a road, like a speed
What do you
bump.
mean you're not trying to take it away from him? Jeff mentioned his name, and I said thank you because nobody else is saying anything about the way Tua's playing, and you immediately had to run to be like, well, don't give him any credit. Chargers didn't rush him, and there wasn't even a team out there. This was just 7-on-7. Why can't? So he had an empty pocket, and what did he do? He smoked him. It was great. What else did he do?
Well, we have to use what
does he have to do to get your praise?
He just got my praise,
900?
Petro. He's not getting 100% of the pie. Speaking of like,
No rushing attack.
Your
You
favorite
said
coaches get 100% of the pie.
Wait.
Tua's not getting 100% of the pie here. Okay, you're
my
like that.
coaches love pie. Let me tell you that right now. But I will tell you what you run down the Dolphins defense, right? You say that
Well,
their left tackle
they gave up 34 points. Yeah.
Their left tackle sucks, and then their quarterback goes out and balls out, and you're like, all right, settle down.
I'm not going to crown them. I'm not like the betting markets don't have them as the favorites in the AFC East. So I'm going to go with that. My thing is, again,
you're just an echo chamber.
We have 3 years and 1 game of a sample on Tua. Granted, we have 1 year and 1 game of a sample on Tua with Mike McDaniel, which has mostly been very good. I'm going to reserve judgment because much like last year, we could see this offense regress when things are not perfect for Tua. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. By the way, can you address this, Jeff? Are you eating kale chips?
I eat kale, but not chips.
Jeff's the seaweed snack guy, right?
Yeah.
Like one of those like seaweed slices.
I'm actually a big sugar guy. Like I eat a lot of Mike and Ike's and had some Pop Bellies chocolate brownie cookies just today.
Oh my
That's
god!
Good stuff. Pop Bellies is an elite sandwich shop.
My genetics just must.
I just go for the cookies.
My genetics must just be terrible. All right, who is the NFC's best? Jeff. Cowboys looked awfully dominant. I don't think the Giants are that good. I think they're the team that regresses back to like 7-10 after a surprising playoff year. Niners stumped Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Who's your best in the NFC now?
I'll go with the Niners for now, just because they've been the more consistent team over the last few years. But it's close. It's close. I mean, it's the Niners to me. When you looked at what they did to Pittsburgh, going in there, and I was one of those guys who starting to believe the hype about Kenny Pickett and George Pickens, and you got to get these guys on the fantasy team, and Mike Tomlin, and getting this team back in the play. It was like watching the Arizona Cardinals play against the Niners. It was so. If you watched any of that game, it was over so fast that I was just like, I can't believe they can't do anything here. And Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel didn't even do anything in the game. George Kittle didn't even do anything in the game, and it was just like they had guys who they were waiting to get the ball to who were Pro Bowl players. So, yeah, Nick Bosa didn't play a whole lot either. Their pass rush was dominant. I just feel like Brock Purdy, if he can be anything close to what he was last year, sorry, Eric, this team is probably going to win 14, 15 games.
Eric?
Yeah. I mean, look, there was a lot of like sharp betting groups that bet that number on the Steelers down to like a pick 'em. And I don't know how the whole betting market's out to lunch like that, but that was rough. I mean, the Niners, yeah, like Brock Purdy, like Tua, executes that offense incredibly well. And they're very good defensively. My issue with the Niners is every single year the training staff ends up being the most important people for them. And if they stay healthy, because if they're healthy, I think it's Niners, Cowboys, Eagles, Lions. That's how the 4 go in the NFC. Everybody else, Seattle was a disaster Sunday. Like, Vikings lost to Tampa Bay. Like, it's 5. Those 4 teams are contenders. And I think the Niners, if they're full strength, are better than everybody else.
Are we forgetting on the Eagles? Are we walking past them too fast because of their sluggish performance against the Patriots?
I feel like that was more Bill Belichick. I mean, I know you're not a Bill Belichick fan.
Well, I'm a fan of his defense and mucking up the games. Yeah, for sure. Just like his ability to win anything of consequence now. No.
Yeah, but that was one game sample what he can do with a really good defense. And I feel like Eric raised this point a second ago. I feel like it was a tough week for a lot of quarterbacks and offenses. You look at the numbers and the way teams played. There weren't many great performances outside of Tua, Matthew Stafford. I mean, there's only 4 guys who threw for 300 yards last weekend. And really, like, Mahomes had a tough guy. That was drops, obviously, but Herbert didn't have big numbers. Burrow we'll talk about him in a second, but he didn't do anything. And so, yeah, I feel like there's probably a little bit of teams knew what to defend with the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. And they didn't. Perfect example, what happens when you don't play people in the preseason. That was a team that looked like they needed a lot more practice together than what they got. in August.
Did Jalen Hurts look slow in that game?
Looks slow and he made bad decisions.
There were a couple plays where he would turn the corner, and I'm like, dude, are you jogging? Like, it was a weird.
Nick Sirianni,
the end of the game
was like,
they're trying to salt the clock, and he runs up the middle again, slow, and then he gets drilled, fumbles, and the camera did this weird thing where they didn't see that it was a fumble, so they just looked at Hurts, and my guy
down the field.
And my guy couldn't have been more. Guy couldn't have given less of a shit that the ball had left his hand. Like it was such a weird. Like, go back and watch the game.
I watched that one.
Yeah, I'm like, and granted, like one of my good friends and former interns works for the Eagles, so I watch the game. I root for the Eagles because I want him to be successful. And I'm sweating this game out. And I'm like, I care more about that run than you did. Like it was freaking me out. But like, it was a weird game. Now both coordinators.
So him and Josh Allen were together before their game started. Is that what we're saying?
Well, at least Josh Allen ran
out of it.
Mo Shrewd is going to run fast, but Josh Allen, his brain was slow, his body was fast. Jalen Hurts, mind probably fast, body was slow, and it was just a weird game. I'm watching him. I'm like, it was one of the more deliberate games I've ever seen an athletic quarterback play. It was weird, and beyond that, I thought the Eagles, like their defensive line did a really good job at winning, but the Patriots had a pretty good game plan to neutralize what is a really good defensive line. And Mac Jones played pretty damn well. Like I thought Mac Jones had a good game for him. Like, not Tua-like or not, anything like that, but I thought that he played a pretty good game.
All three of us had a fairly high level of confidence that the Packers were going to be something this year. Did we all three have them as our surprise? Yeah. Was that what our prediction was, as I recall?
Yeah. Everybody that knew ball knew the Packers were better than the market thought that they were.
Yes. I think many of us are on the over on the Packers. But I'm not getting real excited because they beat the Bears and Justin Fields. I will continue to say that Justin Fields isn't beating anybody.
The Bears had the same win total on the betting market as the Packers did. They had better odds to win the NFC North for most of the offseason. Wow. I'm like, Bears fans acted like Justin Fields was some impressionist painting that none of us idiots could understand. And we're at the art gallery with our girlfriends, and we don't know. We're in college. We have no clue. Like, we don't know how to interpret Justin Fields. And no, he's ass again. Like that. Like,
thanks. Welcome to the party. I mean, I don't know where you've been. What took you? Why this game was the one that put you over the top?
Well, but no, the whole offseason, I'm like, there's all these, the All City. I'm on the CHGO podcast, and they're like, Eric, like, you realize that they didn't give him any help the last 2 years. I'm like, yeah, like, he's still not accurate. He's still not making great decisions and all this kind of stuff. And again, like I said, every Adam Rank on ES, like, all these people are like, oh, the Bears, like, now that they got Justin Fields, a wide receiver, he should be pretty good. And it's like, have we not watched this guy play for 2 straight years?
I have. Apparently, the people in Chicago haven't. They've lost.
Well, now they're ready to bail on him. That's the funniest thing is he was the next great thing 6 days ago, and now it's fire everybody. It's crazy to me.
All right, I do think the Packers are pretty good. I don't think the Bears are good, but should the Packers? Will they be elbowing into this discussion of who's the best team in the NFC, Jeff? Are you ready to get that excited about them?
I don't know. I wouldn't go there just yet, but they if you watch that game, they looked inspired. The defense played like they did the end of last year where they were flying around, making plays. I felt like Matt LaFleur called a really good game, had some really good tricks laid out to get Aaron Jones going. There's something to be said for a quarterback and a coach being in lockstep. And I know Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur had success together, but people will tell you that there was always some, hey, I want to do this. I think LaFleur had to tiptoe around Aaron at times. Had to do some things and make it work. I think with Jordan Love, he's got somebody who's all in with this coach making him successful. And you saw that in the way he played. I thought the best thing about the way Jordan Love played in that contest was he was like 7 for 16 at one point, or like 6 for 13 for like 70 yards, like nothing spectacular. And I thought, oh, where's this going to lead to? And he ended up completing 8 of his last 11 passes and throwing those 3 touchdown passes. And he never wavered from that. And you could tell he believed in the game plan, and the coach believed in the plan he put in place for him, and they executed it. So for me, aside from the numbers, just he played like he wasn't trying to be Aaron Rodgers. He played like he was trying to be Jordan Love.
Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit. By the way, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. You can find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Every project comes with a written warranty, free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. It's Gann Asphalt and Concrete online at GannAsphalt.com. 24-3, Browns dominated the Bengals. It was a pillow fight of zeros for a while on this, and then the Bengals didn't go anywhere. The Browns woke up and got going. Eric, more about the Bengals, more about the Browns?
Bengals. I mean, the weather was terrible. You know, Burrow has small hands. He was injured. Like,
yeah.
And yet, like, my issue with Cleveland is
Did you fade the Bengals when you saw it was going to be raining because of the small hands of Joe Burrow?
No, I liked Cincinnati against the spread last week. I think I was probably the only person in the industry that did, and I was wrong, of course. But, you know, the 0 for 8 throwing to T. Higgins, nothing especially special about the second corner for Cleveland. So, you know, that was more of incompetence than I think defense. But, you know, the Browns have some really, really good pieces. Their offensive line's tremendous. Although they lost Conklin to an injury, Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Okonkwo, like they're all good, like really good edge. Dalvin Tomlinson comes in, helped them stop the run. The Bengals had something like an 18% success rate against running the football. The secondary with Ward, who has had a concussion most of the summer, now back. That was a good addition. But I think I still think for Cleveland, the quarterback's got to play a lot better for them to be a real contender. And they bailed out. Like, look, the whole first half, I was watching this game. It was the Bengals start out at their like 7, get it out to like the 12, punt. Cleveland pisses a drive near midfield down their leg, punts. That was the whole first half, right? Yes. The first half ends like 3-0.
I called it a pillow fight of zeros.
Yeah, and then in the second half, like Deshaun Watson started to run, and they started to have some good fortune, but that's not sustainable. Deshaun Watson's got to start hitting the broadside of a barn. And otherwise it's just going to be a problem for Cleveland, and they're going to be disappointing. So I think it's more about the Bengals. Until Deshaun Watson can perform at the level he did in Houston, Cleveland's always going to be plucky, but they're not going to be a contender.
Okay. All right. I more about the Bengals, more about the Browns. Jeff, where do you put?
I'm on the Browns side. I mean, I hear what Eric's
saying. You had them in the playoffs going into the year.
That's why I believe in their defense. I think Jim Schwartz coming in there is a huge addition.
So you think the Browns defense had more to do with it than tiny little hands?
Yeah, that's right. I think Orlando Brown had a lot to do with it. Couldn't do much with Myles Garrett, could he?
Orlando Brown sucks. I'm gonna let everybody in on this.
I mean, like the first possession of the game, it's like I see the Darius Smith go flying past him, or Myles Garrett going flying past. It was just like that was the whole.
Can we harvest the comments in the YouTube of all these people telling us Orlando Brown needs to be re-signed immediately, or else the Chiefs are going to suck? Because he was ass on Sunday, and he's been low key ass for his whole basically last 3 years. But go on.
I went on real quick, and I'll let you finish. I was on in Cincinnati, and I was like, well, you guys are going to find out why Orlando Brown's not. Oh, sour grapes. You didn't get it. I'm like, dude, parade. No. Like
that's
thrilled.
Right.
Kansas City is thrilled he didn't take the
grape
offer.
Juice.
That was
grape soda
last year. No,
that's right.
Excitement in Kansas City.
That's right. Chardonnay.
That's true. Matt is right. He's like the chat is smarter than that. They are smarter than that. But I'm more being facetious. But like Chiefs Kingdom saying this world's going to come to an end if Orlando Brown doesn't get the contract that he's supposed to get. I'm pretty sure, Donovan Smith didn't look good on Thursday, by the way, but to me, he's a better value than Orlando Brown is.
Yeah.
But you were saying, Jeff, I interrupted.
No, I'm saying the Browns defense is good. And I feel like that's a boost for Deshaun Watson because it allows him to play with less pressure. That, he's got to make the plays. Eric's right. But again, I feel like he's in that same boat of all these quarterbacks that defensively, I think every 4 or 5 years, defenses start catching back up. And we've had a pretty good run here of offenses, high-flying quarterbacks. People put up a lot of points and a lot of yards. And now you're seeing teams have, they've drafted, they've signed players, they've looked at film for all this time, and they found ways to really put a lot of these offenses in more difficult positions. And so that to me was a big part of what week 1 was for Deshaun Watson. It was like, how are you going to play football? I still feel like they're better off marrying what they've done with Nick Chubb and that run game. They lost Jack Conklin, which was a big loss at right tackle for them. But having more of a Nick Chubb run game married with a play action passing scheme than being whatever, trying to be wide open and letting Deshaun, wheel and deal. I think that's going to be a bigger transition than what we think. A lot like what the Ravens are trying to do. A lot of the same problems. They want to play a certain way, but they're built to do other things.
Yeah. By the way, Tommy. So he's got his guys he doesn't like and guys he does like. He loves Willie Gay as a pass rusher, and he's Jamar Taylor all along. He just gave up Odell Beckham Jr.'s money to a right tackle that lines up in the backfield. Am I the only one that saw 2 catches for 37 yards last week from Odell Beckham Jr.? I mean, I'm not sure what. I think the rest of the league is like, oh my God, I can't believe we let this marry up.
Well, hey, can we? I'm look in honor of the WNBA playoffs, and I'm going to 360 windmill dunk on everybody. DeAndre Hopkins. Let's look here. He turned 13 targets into 65 yards. That is a healthy 5 yards a target, and now he's missing practice this week. Thanks for coming, everybody. Some people know, right? Juju played like 13 snaps on Sunday, and then DeAndre Hopkins turned 13 Ryan Tannehill targets into 5 yards per target.
Yeah. It's thus far the big name wideouts are not delivering after free agency. That's for sure. All right, what are you looking for this week, Jeff? You got a game, you got a matchup, a situation, something that you really got your eye
on? Ravens offense against the Bengals. I think that quietly is a huge game for the AFC North and the AFC early playoff implications. I watched the Ravens play against Houston. They won the game, but all this hype about this offense and Todd Monken, it was just, Lamar looked discombobulated. None of the receivers did anything. I want to see what they can do. And then obviously on the flip side of it, the Bengals can't afford to start 0-2 for 2 straight years. Like, this can't become a habit. So it's a huge
in the division
game for both teams in terms of what they're going to show.
Yeah. Are you going to that game, Jeff?
No. Dallas was on my radar until a certain quarterback stopped playing this year.
Yeah.
It became less interesting of a game.
Yeah, it did. Eric, what are you looking at?
Jeff picked the one I was going to say, but I'm actually attending 2 games. I got Vikings, Eagles tomorrow, and then Falcons, Packers. My wife's a Packers fan on Sunday. Look, the Vikings can't start 0-2 either, but they probably will. And that's not a great one when you start with Tampa Bay. And they get the Chargers in week 3. So this is a huge game for the Vikings. Betting markets have actually bought into Minnesota. They opened 7.5-point dogs. Now they're 6.5-point dogs. And I do think, obviously the winner of Falcons Packers is in the driver's seat for a playoff spot in the NFC. So, that's a pretty important game as well.
Can I just say that it's a great weekend of football? I love the games that are up there. Niners, Rams. Are the Rams for real? Let's find out. 2 1-0 teams go at it. The Rams are at home, so they get the home field advantage. I think that's fun. Steelers, Browns, I think is fun. I think Bills and Raiders. Bills need to bounce back. They get a Raiders team that found a way to get a win. Right now teams still feel like they're in it. At 1-0, they think they're good. They may only win 3 more games, but there's a lot of those. But Eric hit on one of them. Falcons, Packers. Wow. Falcons got a chance to grab control. We just said, hey, the Packers real. Nobody mentioned the Falcons. If they win this game, then we'll be looking at them a little bit different if they're 2-0, if they beat the Packers. I don't think we'll be asking, are they the best team in the NFC? But we'll look at them differently. I think that's a good one for one of them to get things decided. And then Bill Belichick staring down the barrel of being 0-2. If he can't figure out how to stop the Dolphins offense, and that Tua who just rides the shoulders of everybody else, if he can't stop that guy, Eric, Bill Belichick's 0-2.
The chat thinks I'm being funny. If Tua goes like 17 for 38 for 187 and 3 picks on Sunday night, I will be insufferable on Tuesday. I will just say that. And not to say that I'm sufferable now. I'm just saying I will be more insufferable than normal if Tua goes out there and doesn't play well on Sunday night.
Yeah, I like it. Listen, we had some people question. We're here on a Wednesday. Sometimes family things come up, and so we have to move. We had to move. This week, we're normally Tuesdays. If you're catching us via the podcast, Tuesdays at 8 or 9. We got a couple of podcasts we do. Just follow us on Twitter, and you can keep up to date, whether it's going to be 8 or 9 Central on a Tuesday for the Two Deep NFL podcast. That's going to do it for us. Enjoy a great weekend of football. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, my name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City, saying thank you very much for joining us on Two Deep.